Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging Community. We're excited that you can join us for our live and interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. We are able to provide these discussions to you along with copies of the source book, thanks to the support of our Positive Aging Community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and find hundreds of resources. Today we have a chat with Esther Greenhouse, the visionary creator of the innovative enabling design approach, which addresses multiple challenges caused by the built environment with a single approach that enables people to thrive. So let's jump into a great discussion with Esther. And get our friends on the streaming platforms going and give a warm welcome to Esther Greenhouse. And I stumbled into Esther because she is clearly a thought leader, and we're going to learn more about this enabling design approach, but she's done some really interesting projects with municipal organizations, been involved with the Age Friendly Initiative. And when I saw, some of her thoughts on social media, and I think in a press release or an article, I was like, I've got to get this woman on to share some of her ideas with us. And Esther, it's great to finally have this discussion. I feel like I've been waiting for it for quite some time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Steve. I'm really glad to be here. I've been looking forward to the discussion as well. And I want to thank you for what you are creating with this platform and with the resources.
I noticed that you were in on a few of our discussions over the last few weeks, and I love it when our presenters do that because it makes you more familiar with kind of the vibe and the flow of these discussions. But yeah, I love it when we have a thought-provoking person like you and some of the others that we've had on. So and you're in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, correct?
Correct.
Great. Okay. Well, before we dive into, the discussion of tackling the caregiver crisis by design, let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I like to say that I'm a pretty unique professional. I have a unique constellation of expertise. I have expertise in interior design, gerontology, environmental psychology, and city and regional planning.
Wow.
And that's because when you start to look at one issue, like how to prevent older adults from being forced into frailty and evicted by design from their homes, all of those areas, all of those subjects, all of those sectors are relevant.
Man, well, hats off to you for, it's really easy for a lot of us in our career to just stay in a lane. And I always admire folks that have a wide field of vision and are able to kind of either get more experience, go to school and get training, and broaden that and weave it together. And I think a lot of that is going to be evident today with our discussion. So let's dive right into it. It's sort of, tell us about this tackling the caregiver crisis by design initiative.
Okay.
How do you define that and what is it?
So tackling the caregiving crisis by design came about for a variety of reasons. One, in addition to my expertise and the projects I've worked on, such as, we talked about, you mentioned earlier, Age Friendly. I was involved in creating one of the first age-friendly centers for excellence in the U.S. and was the strategic director. And things like bringing my enabling design approach to the nation's first elder-focused emergency department. the other part of my life is that I was a child, a granddaughter, an adult child. And if you visit my website, silvertogoldstrategies.com, on the bottom of the homepage, there's a video about my journey and my mission. And in a nutshell, I really started on this path at the age of 5 years old because my maternal grandmother lived with us. And yes, that's the video. My maternal grandmother lived with us. And due to the progression of rheumatoid arthritis, she needed to use a walker. And she couldn't get into the bathroom because the walker wouldn't fit through the door. And that combined with other issues, she had to move to a nursing home. And fast forward to 13 years ago, we were building a new home for my family. My husband was a custom home builder. And we were encouraging my mother to relocate. And what we did was my husband and I joined our expertise and we designed and built a house for her to enable her to maintain her physical and financial independence for as long as possible. And I served as her primary caregiver for over 10 years. And my experiences and what I've seen, not only from the perspective of the adult daughter, the primary caregiver, the experiences that my mother had, but as well, the paid caregivers. So we were fortunate enough to have a home health aide come in once or twice a week to assist. And then my mother spent the last 7 months of her life in an assisted living facility. And getting an insight into what the paid caregivers experience really started this initiative. So I'll tell you a little bit more about what this initiative is.
And see,
yes.
So what I'm intrigued by is
yes.
a lot of times we look at, okay, there's a lot of talk about the lack of paid caregivers, the overwork,
Yes.
all this type of stuff. And usually the solution is, well, we just got to pay them more, but, and I think pay is probably a percentage of that, but I'm intrigued by how design can make a caregiver's job better.
Right. So that's a really interesting point, because one of the things that I was noticing as a consumer of paid caregiving services was things that I was taught 30 years ago when I first started to study gerontology. These same issues were prevalent, if not worse. So issues of inappropriate care, inappropriate wages. And that's really a significant issue. So, yes, that's one part of the solution is paying more, but who is doing that? Where is that happening? And it needs to not just be more, it needs to be a living wage. I was also really surprised by things from hearing from the paid caregivers at the facility where my mom lived. Things like, we would like some more appreciation, being thanked. Other conversations with caregivers in other environments, the issues that population, and it's the women who fill that role. What are their lives like? So in addition to the care that they're providing for our parents, our spouses, our loved ones, typically for a non-living wage, they're also often the primary breadwinner in their family, and they are caring for children and their own elders when they leave the facility.
Mm-hmm.
So, this was the impetus, seeing what they were dealing with, and that it had not changed significantly over 30 years. Now, that's not to say that no one is addressing this properly, but it's not the status quo. So, the issue we're facing with caregiving in this country is that we have an enormous demand that is only growing. If we look at the statistics about family caregivers, in 2010, we had 7 potential family caregivers for one elder. And by 2030, the number will be down to 4 potential family caregivers for one elder. And with the changing demographics, where the older adult population is growing and younger people who could serve as caregivers is shrinking, we are approaching a crisis. And what I'd like to really put out there is this call to action that we have a few years right now where if we don't change our paradigms, we don't change our policies, we don't change our programs and our places, then some of the crises situations that we witnessed during the pandemic, both in facilities and outside of facilities in private residences, are going to become the norm.
Mm-hmm. So what can we do about this? What's the solution? Or I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this.
Most definitely. So what are the solutions? Well, one thing to do is to step back and say, are we looking at all the problems? And my area of expertise is the design of the built environment. So we have been ignoring the fact that the way we design and build in our society is disabling and discriminatory. So what we essentially do is we build places that are ideal for the average height male with high sensory, physical, and cognitive abilities. And everyone else has to try to adapt. Now, I'm 5'1.5", and I have sensory processing disorder. I have 2 visual processing disorders. I am never going to reach the standard, the norm for which we design. So I'm always working against it. What I'm always doing is experiencing something called environmental press. And that's when the gap between what the environment asks of me and what my abilities are is too great. And the greater that is, the more I'm actually pushed to an artificially lower level of functioning by design. And so what we see in this country, and an enormous part of this caregiving crisis, is the fact that we've created housing and communities and even senior living communities that don't enable older adults to thrive. So when we fail to do that, we create what I call forced frailty. So we exacerbate any natural age-related or disease-related decline that may be there. We exacerbate it. So how do we address that? Well, if we change the way we design the environment, we remove that variable, we remove that press, and we can enable people to thrive. If we don't do that, and that's the situation we're in now, we have all these environments that are working against older adults. They're hastening our physical and cognitive and financial decline, and they're increasing the demand for caregiving. So if we don't have enough caregivers, what do? We have to decrease the demand. How do we do it? By design.
Okay, well, I'm intrigued. I know you had some PowerPoints, and I'm a visual person. Are there any things that you're going to share with us that help us sort of understand this concept a little bit better?
Yes. Bear with me while I go to screen share.
All right.
Okay.
That looks good.
So just the overall mission, and I invite each of you in your work and your personal lives to join me on this, which is to end what I call disability by design and enable people to thrive. So this tackling the caregiving crisis by design is rooted in the enabling design approach, which I created to address that mission. And again, what I mentioned before is this notion of person-environment fit. If anybody's interested in where this comes from environmental psychology research, the work of M. Powell Lawton, one of the first environmental gerontologists. And if you distill his theory to its essence, it's when there's a good fit between a person and their environment, you have independence. They can function at their highest level. That doesn't mean that they won't need any support. They may or may not, but they can be as independent as possible. Unfortunately, when you have poor fit, that's a stress for the person to adapt to the demands of the environment. And again, going back to my grandmother, well, she could use a walker. A walker was a supportive resource for her. But because the design of the house, that there were doorways that were too narrow, it prevented her from functioning at her highest level, and it increased her dependency. So when we look at these issues, again, this greater gap, the greater the press. And I really want to emphasize that this creates artificially lower levels of functioning and lower levels of independence. And we can do something about it. And what we want to do is prevent the forced frailty that leads to eviction by design. So, I've done a lot of work in my career with aging in place. I taught for the National Association the National Association of Home Builders for several years, their certified aging in place specialist program. And there's so much discussion on social media and in articles about aging in place. And really what we need to be focusing on is successful aging in place that enables people to thrive. Because over 90% of older adults age in place by default, but they don't do it successfully. They are often struggling to live well in their homes. So all of this results in, taken together, is the enabling design approach, combining the theory of environmental fit and press with the fact that the status quo of how we design and build is flawed and disabling. And then the approach is to look at issues like design, policies, programs, and economic issues to make sure that we can shift the way people are living to address the caregiving crisis.
Wow, that was great. And we've got some really good comments and questions coming in. And when you're talking about aging in place being something that we need to plan for, and we need to, one of the things that's creeped into my sort of mind over the last few weeks is how much, when somebody says, my desire is to age in place, a lot of times that means that's their excuse to just do nothing. Like, it's, I'm just staying put. And we have to challenge ourselves to say, okay, I am, ideally, I'd like to stay here. And
Yes.
what does that mean? And it's, somebody said, Elizabeth says, aging in place is not just about adding grab bars in the shower. It really isn't. I mean, a lot of it is, it's conversations, and it's brainstorming, and it's being brave enough to sort of talk about if you have change in the future, which I think is one of the hardest things for all of us to do.
I'm really glad you brought that up, and thank you, Elizabeth. That's really crucial. So something that I want to touch on is also the notion of shame. And so in our society, unfortunately, we view aging as a negative. We think of old as a four-letter word. And it's frustrating enough to experience normal age-related decline or decline related to a disease. But it's heartbreaking that we are amplifying that by poor design. And when I've worked one-on-one with people and talked to them about this, or when I work with a community and I'm interacting with the residents, older residents, it's really powerful when I share this with them and I say, you know, this isn't some inherent flaw of you that you're having trouble getting in and out of the shower. It's the way we've designed things. So that's a significant issue. There's an article on my website. And if anybody wants to, if you go to my website and go to the contact page, you can request the article, but it's on my website on the home page. There's a pull down menu that says how we can help. And there's under the section for financial planner. Oh, if you're going to show it, that's really great. So one way to reach out to me for more information is filling out this contact form. But Steve, if you can go to the homepage, I'll show you where an article is that is really helpful with having these conversations. And this was written as a resource. So a little further down, Steve, you'll see there is, yes, under how we can help with specific challenges. If you click on financial planning and wealth management firms and click on the enabling design article. So the Senior Advisors, Certified Senior Advisors Association asked me to write this for their journal. And the approach is, let's actually leverage the features of our homes to enable people to maintain their physical and financial independence in retirement. And so financial planners, elder care attorneys, family members, people who work for agencies, government agencies, can talk to people about these issues, use the concepts from these as a vehicle for helping people plan. And before we go on, the other thing that I want to say that is really a tragedy in my mind is that that we even have to think about this. Now, it's one thing if you have a specialized need, but I met a woman recently in a social setting, and we got to talking about what I do. And she said, you know, I wish I had thought about this. We moved into our house when we were in our 30s, and now we're in our 70s. And my response was, why should you even have to think about it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's now. And okay, let me make sure that I get to some of these questions.
Please.
And then I've got a question for you. But so Maggie says, thank you, Esther, for considering both paid and family caregivers in your approach to design, considering the triad is the only way forward. Yeah, I mean, and not to jump the gun on this, but this, Maggie, you bring up a topic that's near and dear to me, is that the way that we we're able to easily save money is to have a network of support that are unpaid caregivers. The key is we've got to make sure that they don't burn out, and we've got to support them. But your thoughts on that triad, as Maggie calls it?
100%. Thank you, Maggie. So I essentially subsidized my mother's long-term care. And the way I was able to do it was by having my own business, by making choices, often choosing my mom's well-being. I was sandwich generation. I was raising my son at the same time. And unfortunately, I did have burnout because it was mostly, on my shoulders. And, another call to action, I would say, is that we need to create a protocol for healthcare providers to be asking the family caregiver, how are you doing? What additional resources do you need? What are you struggling with? So the triad is absolutely crucial. Another way we were able to do this, aside, of course, from the design of the home that enabled her, and actually, I want to say that the home enabled her to maintain her physical independence and thus her financial independence, but it also made caregiving easier. And when I work with municipalities, I invite them to consider how much easier would the provision of home-based services be if they didn't have to fight against the design of the house. Yeah. So Maggie's absolutely right. It's a triad. It's not just one person. And again, these issues are not just one level of society. It's not just about the individual and the family. This affects municipalities, this affects states, and this affects our entire nation because we're all paying into, this is not a closed system. If I'm struggling to pay for care, somewhere somebody is paying towards that.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued about the municipalities that you've worked with and those projects, but let's attack a few of these other questions here. It's Kristen says aging in place is often an excuse to do nothing. I think there's tremendous amount of fear around the costs of doing anything. People don't realize the benefits of giving up home maintenance to go into a more affordable senior living situation. And I think that you hit the nail on the head there, Kristen. It's okay to say you're aging in place, but if you're going to age in place and not think about it, not plan about it, if it's sort of more of a denial. But one of the very important reasons why many of us may be in denial is when we see the price tag of some of this stuff.
Right. So there's two price tags. There's the price tag of modifying your home because it wasn't designed properly in the first place. And I want to be very clear here that I am not attacking architects, designers, builders, and developers because that's the norm. They're building to what the conventions are, the status quo, and the codes. And almost no one outside of academia and OTs knows what environmental fit and press is. So we have a lot of work to do. But in terms of the cost, so one thing is if somebody is interested or exploring their options and they're interested in modifying their home to age in place, the first thing to do is a cost benefit analysis. So if I am going to make a wider doorway, what does that cost me? And versus 1 month in an assisted living facility. So do the math. I mean, it depends on the individual house. To widen a doorway on an existing home probably costs around, give or take, $1,000 to $1,500 because you need an entirely new door. You often have to move electrical. You have to patch or replace flooring. And it usually, to make a wider doorway in new construction, or if you're already doing a renovation project in your house, to do it then, it's less. So on new construction, the cost of a door that's a few inches wider might be as little as $10, $20, $30. So there's that cost benefit analysis. And in terms of looking at moving to independent living or assisted living versus aging in place in your own home, you do have to calculate the home modifications. You have to calculate the cost of in-home care. But also, it's difficult to compare apples to apples, because if you're aging at home in a private residence, often transportation is an issue, and that's provided when you move into a facility. Issues of isolation are much more prevalent when you're living alone in a private residence versus living in a community. And when I first started studying this as an undergrad, my conclusion based on research was aging in place is the ideal, aging in your own home. And I've amended that over my career. It's choice that is the most important.
Yeah, and sort of part of being able to make a proper choice is looking at, like the exercise you talked about, is to try to create an apples to apples with your home. Yes. And another location, not necessarily a senior living location. It could be just simply moving to an apartment or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. Really good. Elizabeth likes your very straightforward approach. It makes perfect sense. And we need to make sure, Arzette says, we need to make sure that families know what their options are, and we are normalizing it. Yes. I mean, that I
Yes.
think this is the exception now. When you walk into somebody's home and it's just open and accessible, I think the big sort of thing that people make a big deal about is, it's like, oh, check out my house. It's got a first floor master bedroom.
Yes.
Yes. Which is wonderful, because you come back from the hospital after going through rehab, and going up and down the stairs is tough. But what if you've got 4 steps to get in and out of the house?
Exactly. So I'd like to, before you move to a question, I'd like to expand on what you said. So there are 2 things. One is, I've seen significant conflation of the concept of design for aging in place and the concept of universal design. And universal design is design for everyone. It's designed to meet the needs, abilities, behaviors of the greatest range of people without any need for specialization. And that points back at what I talked about before, that the status quo of how we design is for a narrow subset of the population. Universal design is taking that lens way out. Unfortunately, universal design, while it's phenomenal, it has been conflated with frailty and disability. And we don't understand disability in our society. We tend to put people with disabilities and frail elders into silos, which it just continues to perpetuate that lack of understanding. But in terms of design, when we want to design for aging in place, the starting point is universal design, but then we may go a little bit further with some specific things that really respect age-related changes. And lastly, I'm talking about the 50 plus population, and I'm 52. So it's not people who are in their 70s and 80s. Measurable age-related changes are present by the time we're 50, to our vision and to our hearing at the least, and that's normal. You're absolutely right. We have to normalize this.
Man, I love it. Okay, let's see. Oh, Jeannie Edwards has her hand raised. So if that's not a mistake, Jeannie, I am opening up your mic if you had a question. And then while you're doing that.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hey, Jeannie. Okay.
Hey.
Do you have a question? Yeah.
Well, it had to do, I didn't know if there were any other national builders or regional builders that are taking these things into consideration, because maybe not everybody has a contact like you that could do a personal, analysis of their home.
Well, Jeannie, I'm glad you asked this question, because I was going to ask the same one as Esther. Let's kind of get down to the street level for those of us in the audience like Jeannie. What do we do? Who do we call? And how do we do this the right way for our individual? And then I'd love for you to expand on what can we be doing in our municipalities and cities as well.
Great. Jeannie, thank you for bringing that up, because that was in the back of my mind. So yeah, there are a variety of things that you can do. One is, I mentioned earlier that I had taught for the National Association of Home Builders. Well, in the early 2000s, the National Association of Home Builders, NAHB, worked with AARP and the American Occupational Therapists Association to create a training program for professionals called Certified Aging in Place Specialist, or CAPS. And the goal of CAPS is to train builders, remodelers, designers, architects, realtors, occupational therapists, physical therapists, to understand how they can play a role in working with individuals like you and your family to modify your home to enable you to successfully age in place. What's involved in aging in place? And something that I really appreciate about the CAPS training is that it's not just about saying, okay, you need to widen the doorways, or or put the electrical outlets at a higher height, or incorporate glare-free lighting. But it's also, these are common family dynamics. These are common scenarios. You might be approached by someone who was hospitalized, and now they're going to a rehab facility for a few weeks. But if you don't come in as a professional and modify their home, they can't move back home. So that's one scenario. Then you have scenarios like people who are planning to put in their dream kitchen, and you can share ideas about how they can create a kitchen that will enable people of any age to thrive in that kitchen. So I would go to the NAHB website and look that up. You can also contact your state or regional home builders association and ask them who are CAPS certified professionals in our community. And
and I dropped in the link to the NHB for CAPS. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you. And that is a nice segue also into what communities and municipalities can do, because when I've worked with municipalities on every level, whether it's with a town, with a county, or a regional group of municipalities and municipal agencies, when we talk about housing, invariably there's somebody in the room who gets up and says, well, why are builders doing it this way? The builders are so terrible that, why are they making these houses that make us frail as we age? And then I always ask, okay, have you spoken to any of the CAPS certified builders in your community? And very few people in the room even know what CAPS is. And they don't know that they have resources right there in their own community of builders, developers, and other professionals who have taken it upon themselves to get the training to make sure to meet this need. Now, broadening that to a wider lens, often the groups that are in that room are typically aging services professionals, people with age-related agencies like the Office for Aging or Health and Human Services. And in that work and in the age-friendly work I've done, often who are missing from the table are the directors of economic development, the business sector, the regional healthcare system. And one of my goals with this initiative is to be working with municipalities in partnership with regional healthcare systems. Why? Because each of them are significantly impacted by the number of frail individuals in their community and the degree of frailty. And they're also at the mercy of the number of direct care workers in their community. So this initiative is really crucial for them.
This is great. Okay, so now I see Ellen Belk is on the discussion, and she's going to be one of our speakers at a future discussion. But I noticed this when I went to the CAPS website at NHHB. It was hard to find a search engine where I could find the CAPS.
It's very hard.
And Ellen said, and as I would notice that, she's like, they need to do a better job at PR. I agree. A lot of these certifications, the only publicity they do is if people with the certifications tell people about it.
Yes, and that's why I said, and I agree. Hi, Ellen. It's nice. I'm so glad you're here. Ellen and I just met a few days ago for the first time at the Environments for Aging conference.
Oh, wow. Well, I don't want to derail this, but
yes,
that sounds like it must have been an awesome place to have discussions about this topic.
It was awesome. It was awesome. There are a lot of people doing incredible work. It's a very small conference. I'm not good at estimating number of people, so I don't know the attendees, but it's a pretty small conference. And it's wonderful to know that there are architecture and design firms, senior living communities, that professionals like Ellen, who has a range of expertise, who are dedicated to evidence-based design. So not designing by whim or trend, but designing based on what the environmental psychology research says makes a positive difference. It's wonderful that there are so many professionals committed to this, but it's really a drop in the ocean at this point. There's a lot more work to be done.
No, this I agree. Are there some innovations, out of curiosity? When you go to these conferences, you kind of walk away with an innovation that you stumble into. It's like, wow, finally somebody did that. Do you recall? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but or whether it's at this, is there sort of an innovation that's caught your attention here that can really help folks in this area of design?
So there were some innovations. I think I'm going to table the answer to that question. One, because of time, but also I'm still processing everything I heard. But I'm going to flip that question, actually, Steve, because you said, are there innovations? And I think one thing we need to do is we need to take a step back and say, how simple can this be? How much innovation do we really need? And when I'm talking about changing our housing stock so that we have wider doorways, at least one zero-step entry, better lighting, light switches and electrical outlets within reach, a room that on the first floor that can be used as a bedroom at a moment's notice. A full bathroom that enables a person with a wheelchair or a walker or a caregiver to assist them. This is not rocket science. It's not innovation.
Yeah.
So come on, let's do it.
It's not asking too much either. I mean, it's sort of, the minimal. Now, so let's talk about, like, I've heard of some municipalities that have, and again, I swear I've heard this, where they've said, look, we're making a commitment to design, and universal design is usually the umbrella, but that any new home that is built in this county needs to have, a no barrier entry, wide doorways, and this, that, and the other. Is that movement part of what you're talking about, and how successful is that?
Okay, so my favorite example of that is Pima County, Arizona. And in approximately 2010, they changed their zoning ordinances to make that a requirement, exactly what you talked about. And over the course of about 10 or 12 years, because of that requirement, over 21,000 new housing units were built, which were different from the status quo, which could enable people to successfully age in place. If anyone wants to partner with me on how we can change the ICC, the codes from the top down, and part of the issue is that in parts of our many states, the way the building codes are adopted or zoning codes are adopted, it's on the local level. And you can't have a state or a county ordinance that is more stringent than what's at the local level. And so we need to be working with the planning and building and development sectors in conjunction with Health and Human Services, with the local healthcare regional health system, to understand that those building codes and zoning ordinances are crucial in terms of reducing the long-term care demands and costs in our society.
No, this is good stuff. So folks, if you're in sort of the public policy space, or if you're just an advocate, this is a great initiative. And oftentimes, like I was talking to somebody the other day about just, one way to sort of build your network and community is get behind an initiative that you agree in, and it helps bring you purpose in life and make the world a better place. So, all right, what do we have here?
So this photo is from about 7 years ago. That was me and my mom. Just briefly, that house that we're in was my home next door to hers. And we designed that house so that it could work for a variety of situations. There was a room on the first floor that met code as a bedroom. We used it as our family room. But at a moment's notice, if somebody was there who couldn't do stairs, that room was there for them. And in fact, the first summer we were there, we had 3 house guests who could not use stairs and were able to very comfortably stay in that room. And across the hall was an accessible bathroom. I just want to also say that this is hard for me because my mom just passed on February 1st. So it's been really interesting because it's not just losing my mom, but the loss of the role, having been her champion, that's gone. But there's some really specific things I want to show here that we need to do cost benefit analyses. So my mom requested a bidet seat when we built her house. And for an approximately $1,000 investment installed, the return on the investment was over 3,000%. Because my mother used that bidet seat regularly, she was able to have one less aide visit per week. So either I bathed her or a home health aide bathed her. And because she was able to clean herself regularly, she could have one less shower a week. And when you look at it in terms of the cost of an aide, that and the lack of demand, the lack of supply of paid caregivers, it really is eye-opening. In addition, she had the dignity of being able to keep herself clean. She had agency. She never had a UTI, and it was less stress for everyone. And when you look at all of this, the savings of at least 30, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, here, $30,000 per person. And when I say up to and towards 500,000 is the features that we put in on my mom's house, combined with our family caregiving, prevented, the features that we put in on my mom's house, which were not radical or innovative, enabled her to delay moving to a facility by 5 to 7 years. That saved the family over $500,000. I'm not sure, somebody from a municipality could tell me how much it would have, or a state, how much it would have saved the state if she didn't have personal resources.
No, these are great. And I think that, when you're talking about the bidet seat, one of the stories that I like to talk about from a design perspective was a friend of mine whose mom was getting macular degeneration.
Mm-hmm.
She was more dependent on the family. She did not want to leave the home at that point in time, and they got the Amazon Alexa device. And she was able to she used to have to call them to have them do the grocery shopping. Now she does the grocery shopping just by telling Alexa, and then say, Alexa, order the shopping, or order my grocery list, and it comes delivered and the person helps put it away. These little things that we don't think about, design, creativity, and technology really do save us a lot. Okay, let's see. I'm looking at the clock here. We're almost to 1 o'clock. So let me look at a few of the questions and comments. Linda Schrager is in the audience. She said, I took the CAPS course in November of 2021, and you were my teacher. And there's a CAPS member, folks, that if you wanted to reach out, there's one. Elizabeth says 2-story home designs should not be approved without a bedroom and a full bath downstairs. I agree. And I think geographically, we probably, there's some municipalities where just, getting creative with how we build on the space available is very difficult. But new housing stock is, I think, the easiest thing for us to address with like a public policy type approach. Let's see, Maggie, I love this, how simple this can be. It isn't rocket science. So true. Just so many helpful innovation things. So many helpful things. And folks are giving you support and love for your mom, and you really are. I think there's so many of us in this field that are drawn to it because of our parents and our grandparents, and it's a wonderful legacy. But it's also, what I also like to do is just think about our loved ones, imagining the world now compared to when my grandfather was in a nursing home, and what it's going to be like 20 years from now, because there is a lot of change and innovation in this space. And Esther you shouting your message from the rooftops does a lot to help that.
Thank you. Well, and I agree, we have come a long way. One thing though is what we experienced during the pandemic, if we don't make some real changes in the next few years, that's going to become the norm. So let's make sure that the vision that you're talking about of progressing forward with more respectful care is what we achieve.
Man, this is great. Great comments, folks. Remember, I recorded this, and I'll have all those comments in with the recording. But Esther, we're at the top of the hour. I could talk to you for hours on this topic, but any sort of things that you and one of the things, folks, if you're out there and you're a part of a conference or something like that, and you could see where a message from Esther on this topic or some of the things on her website, I've seen that you've been a featured speaker at a lot of events out there, and in addition, I believe like that. Now you work primarily with companies, can hire you as a consultant to help with their design and their policies and things of that nature. Do you ever work with individuals to help them with their solutions?
Mostly no, because and that's because I'm very impatient. It was one of the reasons I started to teach why I taught CAPS years ago is I personally don't have the patience to do this one family at a time. And that's because this is my life's mission. Like we have to get going and we have to make changes. Less than 1% of our housing stock has key universal design features. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to change the path of a ship. I'm trying to change the whole direction that the globe is rotating in. There's a lot of change to make here. And the way, some of the great ways that I can help advance that is working with municipalities in partnership with regional healthcare systems to develop strategic initiatives. I am involved in design, but it's more from a strategic development approach, and it's more from providing the critical lens and the key information to guide and support the design experts who are day in and day out creating the environments.
I love it. And I dropped your contact info in there in case anybody, wants to reach out to you. And the cool thing though is that if you're out there and you're listening to Esther and you've got a family issue that you're dealing with, she's got lots of resources. So,
Absolutely. So I'm not, my door is not closed to individuals and families. Please jump on my website, fill out the contact form, and I'll connect you with resources. I'm happy to do that. The other thing that people can do is follow me on social media. Look for me on LinkedIn, for example. I post resources and articles and so on. So I can help in many ways.
I love it. Well, this has been wonderful. And I was, I wrote this down because I saw it somewhere in your writings is that we are committing crimes against humanity by design. And I think that's an overall theme that I'm certainly more aware after sort of hearing your perspective that we can do a lot more, folks, and we can do a lot more in our own homes.
Yes.
But let's spread the word, because it's just because our individual home is accessible, that's just our universe and our family. Let's make this big scale impact.
Absolutely, because we also don't want to be living in a home that supports us, but we can't function outside those four walls. So yes, we are committing crimes against humanity and society by design. But the thing is that's so crucial is that what I'm talking about is preventable.
Yeah.
We know how to do this. We don't need to do any further innovation. We just need to shift what our norm is.
I love it. Esther, it's been great speaking with you. I look forward to having you back on, and maybe we can dive into another rabbit hole. But and again, thanks to everybody in the audience that was joining in with your comments and questions. And we will have this recording and everything up later this afternoon.
Thanks so much, Steve.
You bet.